I'm Pete Moores, Chief Problem Solver here at PBM Consulting. I just wanted to share some thoughts I've been having on the model of funding that the NHS in the UK currently struggles with, and my recent post about the technology alone can't save the NHS. Now, this isn't going to be a political discussion and the like about whether or not this is something we should be doing. As I said in my piece, politically driven decisions like Brexit have enormous repercussions, negative ones, for governments. But if we're using the analogy of the government being a company, and that company being the NHS, and you've got to run this company in the proficient, sane, transparent, honest ways that a board of directors is held accountable for doing in a normal company, then consider the funding model of the NHS. And here's why it doesn't work and can't work. So we know that the funding envelope was created based when the NHS was formed in 1948, based on the knowledge they had of the conditions, the health conditions suffered by the population, which in 1948 looked a hell of a lot different than it does in 2023. Well, number two, they knew treatments, medicines and treatments and interventions that were possible to be delivered to the population in 1948. And they drew up a model so that could be adequately staffed so that it could be delivered and encompass free at the point of access for all healthcare, which is absolutely, I still believe, is a fundamental human right that any government should be delivering. But the question is now, and the way that the NHS has been operated has not kept pace with the changing circumstances, and particularly with a view on technology and budgeting. And there's a very myopic view applied to funding for the NHS that they can only have so much more money, that's all they can do. That is fundamentally broken. Technologies can do two main things in the context of the NHS, for example. They can both improve and streamline and automate and otherwise make better the current processes and save the organisation money, or they can allow the organisation and the NHS to do more things. It increases its capability. Suddenly it can do specific types of testing and particular procedures that it wasn't able to do before. And if it wants to deliver those to match the needs that there are in the country's population, so there's a child that is looking for this particular surgery that suddenly is now available, then the NHS will meet the costs of that person receiving that treatment. But the costs of actually delivering that treatment obviously then increase the costs of running the organisation. And this is why this model of trying to make sure that as new technologies come on stream, which is a trickle because so many ideas that could save the NHS money or that could improve its capacity and allow it to do new things never make it to the NHS because of the valley of death, because that 9 out of 10 early stage technology ideas never get to a form of commercial success or real world impact. Even to introduce a technology which saves an awful lot of money and makes the NHS more efficient costs an amount of money. The costs of implementing a new innovation, the majority of those are met after the invention stage. They're in its implementation and in it making it work within the clinical setting, within the NHS. Those costs are currently not met by the same people, the same organisations who take care of the funding that goes into the development of the innovation itself. Those costs must be met again from the NHS budget. So that is being therefore stretched even further from delivering the frontline care. As the demands on the NHS budget increase, both from the changing needs of the population, from the additional costs of the new capability and the new medicines and new innovations, and from the cost of introducing efficiency measures as well, as those all budgets go up, within this fixed budget envelope the NHS seems to operate in, everything else is getting squeezed. And nurses and all healthcare professionals working within the NHS can feel that squeeze viscerally, physically, financially, emotionally. The current labour shortages and within the NHS, the failure to attract new healthcare professionals will never be solved until the environment in which they work goes back once again to being a place where people from all around the world aspire to work, like they did when the recruiting of the first non-UK workers via the Windrush generation, which have powered the growth of the NHS and still continues to be a globally recruiting workforce as it is. But the conditions, as anyone you speak to in any facet of the NHS all over this country will tell you, the pressure has never been more intense. And these strikes clearly are a desperate way to get the government to realise that this funding model isn't working and that all NHS workers deserve to be paid at a level that allows them that rewards them for the incredible work that they do, the life-saving work that they do every single day, the responsibility they have on people's lives, on literally the health of the nation. They deserve to be recognised and rewarded and compensated for the work that they do. And they cannot do this on this funding model, which is a fixed envelope, where they want to do everything. They want to have all these new initiatives to save money. They want to have these new technologies and medicines available to all that need them. They want to have staff and conditions that they can afford to pay them, but they can't. And the thing that's suffering is the people until the model changes. And I think this funding gap, that where the value of the product development and the value of death funding gap from the university, these new ideas from the universities and the minds of inventors, and the pathway that gets funded all the way into use into the NHS and the NHS budget need to collide, and there needs to be some overlap, because the adoption of these new technologies into the NHS, I believe, should be funded by a research and technology part of the government, not from the NHS's core budget. And much more money should be available, because there are so many good ideas that are failing to get into the NHS because of the squeeze of the NHS budget on the actual new technology procurement process. This funding gap doesn't have to be addressed by a pot of government funding, but it certainly needs to contribute, because the returns from this pathway, even though it is a route to market for a new technology into the NHS, which is in itself a huge customer with forecastable demand, those will not be enough to attract enough early stage and venture capital and private sector institutional funds, because they can get much more return for their money if they do more of a private deal. So there is a role for government to play. It's not just simply doling out more money. That's why I believe the model needs to be changed. It's nothing as black and white as privatisation, but there is a clear and significant funding gap that will affect the UK's ability to continue to deliver free care, healthcare free at the point of access for all, up to the total level of technology complexity. If it's not addressed, then the only answer to this problem, any solution to this problem, is to create a two-tier system whereby insurance pays for the new and cutting-edge treatments and medicines, and the NHS's core services reduce to that is required to maintain life and that was originally envisaged in 1948. I think we're at a turning point. I think we need cross-party consensus across all political parties, and it done as if they were working as a board of directors for this company, not as a bunch of whatever they are right now. These people are elected by the people. The NHS is the people's. It needs to be saved, and the right model needs to emerge straight away before we lose any more people from the service itself and it does indeed collapse.